Judgment Day is approaching.
Some will perish, some will survive, some will gain, and some will lose.
Weather disasters are happening.
Even the scientific community is on the side of the esotericists, and they confirm the fact that yes, the poles are shifting. Yes, it's getting warmer. We are currently coming to the end of the little ice age.
So it turns out we can't influence this in any way.
It's not possible to globally cancel such events. Every subsequent day will be, or like this one, or worse than the previous one.
Are there demons?
Demons definitely exist. These are just balls of energy that seep in here through other people.
Can they hide under a person's avatar?
In most cases, when a person is under such an influence, they won't understand anything anymore. There's an effect called sleep paralysis. There is a partial exit from the body, a partial exit into the astral. Just because we can do it in our nature.
One of your listeners is writing, "Hello? In 2019, the gift of the Creator was revealed. Through Aslan Warziati, the book The Exam has begun. The book has been translated into many languages. The fourth day of judgment is approaching. Weather catastrophes are happening. We have seriously harmed the earth. The magnetic poles are shifting. Aslan Warziati knows how to stop the process of climate change and pole shifts. It's time to stop the wars and save the planet." Anton, what is your vision of the situation on Earth on a global scale? Is the day of judgment approaching?
The pole shift happens regardless of how we behave here. These are the cycles of our planet. These are its rhythms. And when someone tells me, come on, behave well so our planet can align its cycles, it sounds to me like ignorance on their part. It's obvious that our planet won't disrupt its cycles. It will continue as it has been. It has been moving in this rhythm, and it will continue to do so. And even the scientific world is on the side. And they confirm the fact that yes, the poles are shifting, and they do it regularly. And as we can see, humanity is alive and thriving. So this time it will be the same, the poles will shift. We will continue our existence as a civilization. Some will die, some will survive, some will gain, and some will lose, depending on what a person is like. A unit, an individuality. If this is the individuality of the parasite, most likely he won't survive it. If this is the individuality of a person who knows how to love unconditionally, then they will survive 10 such pole shifts and nothing will happen to them. And it is very important to understand that there are no messages, no books, no prophecies. They don't help to overcome all this if a person knows how to live in and embrace with his soul. It really doesn't matter what will happen tomorrow for that person. Tomorrow, everything will be fine. If a person does not know how to do this, then without any cataclysms of the end of the world and a change of poles every subsequent day, it will be,
or the same as this one at best, or worse than the previous one. What do you think? Are weather cataclysms a form of reckoning for those who deserve it in a spiritual sense? And does it all seem to work out harmoniously?
Humanity is currently living in the Little Ice Age. This is, in general, an unnatural state for our planet. And why is the unnatural state of our planet being framed as a punishment for humanity? Our planet is currently returning to normal in its cycles and rhythms. Yes, it's getting warmer. It's always been warm enough here. I'll say it again. We are currently coming to the end of the Little Ice Age. And what is happening to our planet right now is not a result of human activity. The eruption of one volcano can cover a year's worth of these emissions. Savings. Of all these emissions, one volcano. It all erupted. For a year, humanity has been trying to save something. All these emissions are being overshadowed. We are not in this space just to spend our energy solely on the physical aspect. I would even go so far as to say that nature is responsible for the physical aspect. We are here to carry certain energetic manifestations. Those manifestations that are not present in other forms of life that inhabit the earth. Only humans have an energy configuration that appears from the outside as an infinite flow. And from this stream, energy flows out at various levels. It flows out and from the body, both from above and below the body. These energy centers are known on the internet as chakras. In fact, there are a lot of them. And the fact that you can find 7 chakras on the internet is just too few. There are many, there are millions of them. And only humans have such a structure. And only humans are capable of manifesting this structure. So these energies come from within, from ourselves. To release this into the surrounding space. In a sense, you could say that the mission of a human is not to regulate CO2 emissions. To release their energy from their flow, from their structure, to release energy outward, to flow out. And this is in demand in our reality. This is what is truly required from humanity. Everything else is just games of the mind. Self-deception, scary stories. Or just the cycles of our planet, regardless of what we do here.
So it turns out we can't influence this in any way.
We can try to influence this, and we can pull some things back, bring some things closer, but globally, we can't cancel such events. Although, yes, we can slightly shift these dates, but the question is why? To what end? What will change because of that? If a person, we need to spend this energy on expressing our nature, on manifesting our energy, on taking actions that are truly required from a person here. So, no matter what rhythms of our planet change, for us as humanity, everything will always be fine.
One of your listeners left a detailed comment. I'm interested in health, but not in a general sense. The postulates about causality, that's clear. I would like practical techniques, something to add to the practice about relaxing spasms and releasing blocks. It's just that all my practices are going on, but the sensations are all concentrated on the left side of my body. Well, for example, in practice with the energy centers, I feel the movement of energy on the left side of my body, while on the right, it's just one continuous spasm. Even the hand is constantly clenched on a physical level. The thumb moves away on its own. I have to relax it all the time, put it back in place when I notice it. So I would like practical details on how to work with this more effectively, and also how to redirect the released energy to specific problem areas in the body, or it redirects itself as needed. I just started practicing recently, but I've already seen results in my health and everything else. Very cool, I'm very happy. Thank you so much for making this available to the public. All the information is just amazing. For convenience, I'll read it in order. Questions from this comment. Anton, why is it that in this case, when the girl practices, the sensations are concentrated only on the left side of her body, while the right side always has a block and spasm? What could this indicate?
This indicates that the person has just started practicing. Yes, our attention at first is like a mad stallion jumps and runs around to attract attention. And what attracts this attention are the aspects where the energy starts to move faster. So it's like a sunbeam that immediately makes your attention bounce off. What should I do about this? Just keep going, practice, and continue to hold your focus. In the areas that I'm demonstrating in practice, these are quite common, even widespread. This is quite a common phenomenon among people who are just starting out. They just don't know how to keep their focus on specific processes. Just recently, a similar question came up in a closed club. The person says that they are starting to practice. The fourth energy center is located in the chest area. We start this practice, I observe the person's attention, their energy, and we communicate. I say, well, look at the state of your fourth center. Oh, she says, everything has started moving for me. I say, that's wonderful. I ask, so what state is the energy center in? She says, well, I thought that everything was moving like this. I say, well, hold on, I've explained many times where the energy center is located. Well, I don't feel anything there. I say, here it is. And this is already being honest. So sometimes when a person doesn't feel something, they easily deceive themselves and create the illusion that everything is fine. But when I catch the person in that moment and say, well, no, I can see that your center isn't working at all. He says, well, yeah, I don't feel anything there. And we start looking for that center. Not on the left side, not on the right, but right in the middle, inside the chest. And we find it there. And the person says, listen, I started to feel it. It's tense. I see those spasms. I see those structures, but I can see how the center begins to ignite beneath them. Why did this happen? Because the person took control of their attention and didn't let it jump around on those aspects that attract this attention. So that's how it usually happens at first. So here, you just need to focus better on the processes that are happening in the practice at the moment.
Can the released energy be redirected to specific problem areas in the body? And how do you do that?
You can redirect it, but it's better not to do that. If we are working with energy centers, we release them into the space around us. So we don't tell them where to flow, we give them the opportunity to flow everywhere. Free and unobstructed. This is the most optimal way to interact with these energies. The energy that we can redistribute is sexual energy. It needs to be redistributed because it's unlikely to flow anywhere on its own, except for creating new life at the moment of orgasm. The other energy processes that I showed in the first course, practical energy work, we leave them all in their natural state. We just increase the intensity, and as the intensity increases, the physical body, with all its injuries, starts to recover. Regenerate, the more we are in a state of perception of our energy, the deeper we dive into these processes, the more free we are, the more we allow this energy to move without hindrance. The faster the physical body will recover. There's no need to redistribute anything anywhere.
There will be more details on how to manage this energy, how to direct it to your painful spots in the body in Tai 14 and how to learn to heal your body. You can find this out in the training programs, where specific steps, practices, and tools will be provided. We'll leave the link to these courses in the description below the video. Anton, in one of your interviews, you talked about your vision of death and what happens to a person's soul after it. One viewer for this, he left such a comment. When he said the phrase, "Death separates a person from the soul," everything became clear. That's nonsense. All magicians, practitioners, and even ordinary enlightened people who understand what the body and life are, after the death of the physical body, reunite with their spirit. That's the essence of death, if it can even be called an essence. It seems opinions are divided into two camps. Some believe that death connects a person with their soul, while others think it separates them. Can you please tell me why your vision is exactly like that?
Because this is a vision, it's not an opinion, it's not knowledge from some book, it's a vision. A person who sees the same thing, people who have reached the ability to perceive these processes agreed with me. It's not a matter of camps, it's a matter of what happens in reality. We are connected to our soul from birth. The soul is not realized here. It doesn't move at all. It has a connection to the physical body, a connection through the heart with that part of consciousness that is inside the physical body. But there is no soul here. And it is this connection that breaks at the moment of the physical body's death and the severing of that part that is here, which is aware of itself. And there is a whole layer of the universe where these torn off pieces later settle down in the form of black crystals. And again, this is not a matter of which camp you're in, it's a statement of fact. And even in the Bible, this place, it was described quite accurately before. The Bible that is available to us now has been translated and edited multiple times. In its original form, there wasn't even hell. Not that kind of hell with devil's fire and all those other attributes. No, it was a place where a person is deprived of the ability to move, deprived of the ability to perceive, where they are immobilized and unconscious. Here comes the description of that place, and that's exactly where a person ends up after death. That's exactly where it comes from. Jesus released those particles that were there. But the fact that he released them doesn't mean that others didn't crowd in there. It was a one-time event. Right now everyone is heading straight back there again. This is a fact of reality. A person who has extrasensory perception and he just is convinced of this. Yes, there is a possibility, by connecting with your death, to return, to get back into the flow, to maintain that connection. There is such a possibility, but it's an achievement. It's not something that happens to everyone. It's exactly an achievement that is practiced, sometimes for a lifetime. If it didn't need to be practiced, there would be no spiritual development. You jump from life to life until you get tired of it all, and that's it. No, for some reason there are traditions, there are schools, there are meditations. It's exactly an achievement. And to attribute this achievement to everyone, that it will be the same for everyone, no, it won't. In most cases, for everyone, it will be a visit. This space, we call this the first gate. In other traditions, it's called something different. In Christianity, this is called hell, but not the hell where demons run around with pitchforks, but rather how it was originally before it was edited. So, in answering this question, I still urge people not to take sides and to develop themselves. And having reached the ability to perceive, just go and check who, in the end, turned out to be right.
A viewer writes, I was intrigued by the thought of quitting smoking. I don't engage in any special practices, but I constantly study the world and myself in it. I'm experimenting, comparing. At some point, I just lost the desire to smoke. It's not connected to anything at all. It's just that other things became more interesting for the brain. The thought crossed my mind that smoking people feel and see the world differently. They are a bit deprived, I guess. But I like smoking as an action and a way to take a break. And here, it all stopped bringing me pleasure. I even went to the doctor because I thought maybe it's some kind of illness. And the body rejects tobacco. It's been 5 years without cigarettes and I don't crave them. Is it just age or a level of knowledge? Has it increased?
The value system and the way of reacting to this world have changed. When a person doesn't know how to react properly, they really stress themselves out. He really tenses himself up. Smoking allows you to mimic yourself a bit through the substance and your own health. And it has grown. It's something like pain relievers, energy pains. So when a person lives their life in such a way that these pains haunt them, he uses nicotine, the substance found in cigarettes, to make things a little easier, to relax himself a bit. It's just a crutch that helps you keep going, to live on. A person who comprehends reality, who changes his value system, changes his reaction to the external world, which changes it from their awareness, from their knowledge, from their capabilities, more expanded, more qualitative, he stops stressing himself out. And if he stops stressing himself out, then he doesn't need to relax anymore. And regarding the image that we liked, this image is imposed on us by highly effective managers who at one time, they actively promoted smoking for all the most heroic characters in movies and advertisements. In all sorts of clips and posters, the hero, the winner, the champion, had to light up. It's just an advertising campaign that ingrained this behavior pattern in people's minds. That's why sometimes a person just likes to smoke because they want to be like a winner. And everything. But this is part, of course, of the conglomerate. And what I said before doesn't cancel that, at least in most cases. Still a person in this way.
Runs away from himself and from those reactions that really tighten him up, like smoking and other bad habits which affect our spiritual growth.
Smoking and bad habits disappear from a person's life as they grow spiritually. Basically, they appear when there is no spiritual growth, when, on the contrary, the soul hurts, the person is tense, the person is constrained, driven, tired, exhausted. That's when bad habits gain their strength. When a person simply doesn't know how to live properly, not just from the perspective of the physical body, but also from the perspective of the psyche and energy, which is very important because energy is primary. And when there is a lack of such knowledge, but life goes on anyway, harmful habits start to emerge as a compensation, as a kind of defense mechanism, some ways to relax and release oneself. But as a person gains skill mastery, in mastering their energy, they become aware of how it all works, how all these mechanisms are arranged. They stop having any significant meaning, tempting, alluring, and they simply fade away from life. They fade away from the life of the practitioner, being replaced by pure, beautiful states, which A person can hold it without additional help or means.
If we look at this question from the perspective of energy, can we say that someone is smoking through us, expressing their will and suppressing ours?
It's in the sense that it's not me who wants it, it's something else inside me that wants it. That's nonsense. This is just yet another attempt to shift responsibility onto someone else, to say that everyone is to blame except me. No, that's not going to work. A person smokes because there are reasons for it, all within the person. Yeah, they could have messed with his head with some ads and imposed those images on him again. Why did you allow it to impose themselves on you? So you also have some passions that instead of going to satisfy them, you just light up a cigarette, creating an illusion for yourself that you're some kind of achiever. Like a hero from a movie, when a champion smokes, you're not a champion, but you smoke, and it seems to you that you are a champion. A champion smokes who smokes. You're not a champion, but you smoke, and it seems to you that you are a champion. But you're not a champion. If you become a champion, chances are you won't even be able to smoke to become that champion. It's just ordinary human laziness in this case. Although, yes, there are aspects when the intake of these substances into the blood, into a person, into their flesh, creates certain conditions for alleviating the suffering that a person experiences, even if they may not be aware of it. That's why there's a very strong dependence on these processes. They really do alleviate suffering, but again, you just stop suffering. Thanks to your skills, mastery, and a different way of life, a pure way of life, and you no longer need these substances. You have nothing to get rid of in terms of suffering. Just know.
Anton, you always get quite a lot of positive feedback and words of gratitude. Here are some of them. Good afternoon. Thank you. Now I know what real practice is. I don't like to fantasize in practices, but to feel that was me, but without the physics. And my little piece, some winged feathered form, it struck me, brought me to tears. A profound look at what surrounds us. Thank you, Anton. I love Anton. You can listen to him endlessly. You guys are just amazing, incredible. But we also found this comment. This is a demon in the guise of a human. Don't believe him, he's lying. Why can the same person be a demon for one person and a teacher and master for another? What can this mean?
In most cases, a person sees around him their inner aspirations, their inner aspects. I have never called myself a saint. I have never called myself a prophet. I have never referred to myself with any terms implying divinity. I have never called myself a prophet with any terms that imply divinity. I've always said that I am a human and all aspects are manifested in me. Possible facets. Accordingly, those facets that are called demons by some are also manifested in me. And if a person sees nothing beyond these facets, maybe this person should expand their perception. But if we are going to speak a bit more generally, not just about me, each of us has manifestations, both demonic and angelic, within us. The other thing is how balanced they are and how honest a person is with themselves in these processes. If a person is pretending, then their demonic side, the component jumps out unexpectedly for everyone. If he isn't pretending, if he's trying to be sincere, it doesn't mean that he's pleasant to everyone. That doesn't mean he will be good for everyone, but he will be sincere. And that's why he won't be held accountable. Yes, some people might not like him, but no one will call him a scoundrel. There is an interesting effect on the internet when there is, for example, some speaker, blogger, presenter that many people watch, but he pisses these people off, but they watch him. But he irritates them. They will never give him money. They will never go for him to fight him against some forces. On the contrary, they will genuinely be happy that he finally has problems, yet they still watch him. There are people on the internet who are watched because they are liked, and they don't wish them any harm. They also have a lot of views. There are different ways to express oneself and different ways to perceive those who are expressing themselves. Human, by nature, has manifestations in all areas, both suric and asuric. So both demonic and divine. What is in a person? So what prevails in a person is what they will see in those around them. Accordingly, when a person sees, no matter in whom, as a fact in general, if they see a demon, it means that this is what prevails in them. These qualities, if a person sees beauty, which means that beauty prevails in this person, so he is beautiful himself.
What do you think? Are there demons, and can they hide under a person's avatar?
Demons definitely exist, but they have their own world in which they live. And to hide under the avatar of a person, it seems like there is no meaning for them. It's like a person hiding in the avatar of a beast. Why would they do that? Why would a person pretend, for example, to be a sheep? What for? Sheep, for what purpose? The same goes for demonic beings, for demons. These are ethereal beings, fiery ones. And the very fact of their existence in our material world already calls into question the integrity of this material world. So, they are fiery, and they will destroy the material world around them. To get into the avatar, that avatar will just burn up. How can he withstand such a creature?
What signs can you look for to understand that something is wrong with a person, and that they have been attached to or connected with something, and that they are starting to be controlled?
At the same time, there are many inorganic forms of life in our world that are completely safe, completely harmless, which are often labeled as demons and evil spirits. In reality, they are just little balls of energy that seep in here through other people. Because they themselves cannot directly come here. They seep in from a different level of reality, one that is hierarchically lower than our human level. And they can create illusions, they can create images, but they are not those images themselves. And they can coexist with people quite peacefully and can even settle in someone. But again, in order to settle in someone, this person must already be very strong, damaged. If a person, just a normal person, in no way can an inorganic being settle in them because they are too weak. But at the same time, these are inorganic forms of life. They can draw all sorts of terrifying pictures, their own images, and look like devils or something. But it's enough to practice a little in perceiving energy. It's just little balls of energy, not even close in descriptions. Real sirs and insirs.
How can a person understand what signs indicate that they have been connected to something? And how can they avoid confusing this with mental or physical fatigue?
In most cases, when a person has fallen under such an influence, they won't understand anything at all. It's like asking how a person can realize that they're lying unconscious. How can a person understand that they are in a coma? Yeah, there's no way to understand. That's it, you've already been affected. But at the same time, the people around will perceive it quite well in terms of feeling an alien presence. That is, it is not just fear, it is exactly the same horror that you can experience when walking through a cemetery, or when at the intersection of some very small location in the forest. Or there are such places. They are scattered across the earth, and such places can sometimes be found even in certain villages and cities, where you just feel terrible for no apparent reason. And this fear, it's primal. It's closer to horror, to that cold, paralyzing terror. It's not just fear. And a person possessed by Anuna, by holding it within itself, the alien consciousness creates exactly this kind of halo around itself, which is perceived exactly this way by those around it. The person themselves can't really understand this at that moment. It's like a state of coma.
There are several similar comments from a man on the topic. asking what your source of Kali Yuga is, which has just ended. We have entered the next age, where life will be 1,000 years or more. But you can decide for yourself how long you want to live in this age of super abilities and awakening nonsense. You need to live for 1,000 years to know your own body. Moldashev, listen. Anton, what is your vision? Can a person live for hundreds of thousands of years?
It's funny that I'm familiar with Moldashev's works, and even at some point in my development as a practitioner, I was guided by them. Yes, no, right now it's Kali Yuga and you shouldn't be messing around. Why shouldn't we be messing around? Because this era is described in books, it's described in scriptures, in the Tantras, in the Puranas. All the information is there. And if you just spend some time not even listening to me, and not on reading Moldashev, but on reading that very literature where the word Yuga is used. And those like Kali Yuga, Dvapara Yuga, Satya Yuga, just read the descriptions of these ages and you won't have any more questions. It mentions the height of a person, the structure of society, values, and behavioral traits. It has everything. And if a person is able to just look out the window, they will unmistakably determine which yuga we are currently living in. Would you call our age the age of awakening? Yes, no, of course we are in the Kali Yuga, but even in the Kali Yuga there are rhythms, the rise and fall of consciousness, the rise and fall. Right now we are in a rhythm of the decline of consciousness, and this rhythm will last for at least another year at minimum. And only after this rhythm will there be a rise in consciousness. But these rhythms, they are all going down, they are all on a decline, meaning the trend is still downward. Yes, this is a trend. Has an oscillatory form, but it goes down at the end of the Kali era, which will mark the end of everything. But there's no need to rush and there's no need to worry either. We still have 400,000 years of earthly life ahead of us.
If a person, for example, didn't know that they would die, could they exist longer than usual?
No, they couldn't. Again, this is the peculiarity of the potassium anthem, that our life is predetermined by time. Here, a person who is given a certain 100 years in the previous era. If I'm not mistaken, 10,000 people are predetermined. But I might be mixing things up because the previous era doesn't interest me much. I'm here and now. So no, a person will still age and they will still die. And this is demonstrated by raw foodists, sun-eaters, vegetarians, monks, non-monks, and even a few libertines, and even porn actors. Everyone demonstrates the same thing, they age and die.
What is the difference between those who live long and those who age faster and leave this world?
Here, you need to look at the person's energy and the accessibility of medicine for that person. I think everyone knows Tom Cruise, who demonstrates permanent youth. How much can this actually be demonstrated? Having access to medicine. Despite this, we have examples such as the Rockefellers, I think, who, no matter how much they tried to extend their lives, still passed away. Here, it's basically the same. There are long livers who don't even have access to medicine. They just live for 120 years. Here, you just need to look at the lifestyle of that person. What he never had, what he never allowed himself, what he never experienced. Basically, it's very predictable, very standard days. Live through 100 plus years. Days that are all alike are of absolutely no interest to me. Although I understand that yes, it can be done, but that still won't save you. You'll just be postponing the inevitable.
One of your listeners is curious about what can be done with elemental energies and how they can be practically used. Some vivid examples of what can be done? Can you give some examples?
The elemental energies are those that I demonstrated in the course Practical Energy Work. In general, this is the manifestation of the 5 tattvas, the manifestation at the level of the elements. These are the energies of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Each of these energies allows for the manifestation of certain effects. For example, the energy of earth allows for manifestation enough vivid physical strength without relying on my physical body. And I periodically use this energy when I need to interact with the material world, like moving the washing machine or shifting a wardrobe. I use the energy of earth to significantly expand my capabilities, like physical strength, its application. I actually talked about the energies of water and air in my course. If it's a bit red, then you really need to look a little in a different direction. It is these energies, it is these elements. They lay the foundation for the transformation of our physicality into pure energy. So this is the body of light, the rainbow body, the fire from within. These are all names for the same process from different traditions. And it is precisely through these energies, through their connection in every cell of the body, that such possibilities are opened up. So people who practice these things, in most cases, they practice not for the sake of superpowers, because no superpowers will save you from death. They practice this to connect all these primary elements into one cohesive vibration. And because of this, transform your physical body into pure energy, which will allow you to move forward beyond the material world.
One of your listeners describes the following: Anton, what happened to me? I've woken up at night twice in my life feeling like I was completely frozen, unable to move. Time passed in terrible cold, and I barely managed to reach for the blanket and cover myself. I didn't warm up right away and fell asleep. It happened both in winter and in summer. Anton, what could that have been?
There's an effect called sleep paralysis. This happens when that part of consciousness that manifests in the material world loses its connection with the sensory organs of the physical body. So it's like a kind of partial exit from the body, a partial exit into the astral. And at that moment, you continue to be aware of yourself within the physical realm, but you lose control over that physicality. In fact, from this state, you can calmly exit your body and walk around in your energy body, but you can return again, reconnect with your sensory organs, and continue to control your physical body. It's just a matter of skill. And when a person encounters this, yes, it can be very strange, very incomprehensible. This cold can also arise because the perception of the influx of streams of consciousness begins inside the body, inside the physicality. It is perceived exactly as cold, but it's enough to be just a little bolder and to interact with this process consciously, and it comes under control. And for you, it no longer becomes a problem at all. It's just an incomplete exit from the body, which can sometimes happen spontaneously. Just because we can do it, it's in our nature. The other thing is, very few people develop this within themselves.
In one of your videos, you touched on the topic of chakras. What comment was left on that? Just the 2 lower chakras, that's all. Is that all that's wonderful about a woman? What a selfish person. Anton, can we divide the chakra system in terms of gender, male and female?
The man apparently understood something of his own and will react to it. He didn't say anything like that. When I talked about the energy centers, I was actually saying the same thing I always say. In a woman's body, the second center is responsible for sexual pleasures, while in a man's body, the first center is responsible for sexual pleasures. All of this does not deny the existence of other centers that are present in both male and female bodies. In a woman's abdomen, there is a vicar of energy that is responsible for her feminine nature. And this has absolutely nothing to do with energy centers or chakras, not even close. So the person just misunderstood me, came up with something of their own, and described their reaction to it, something personal.
Chakras, common energy centers. Is it the same thing?
To some extent, yes. We're talking about the same things. But if we're talking about chakras, then there is already a pretty strong template associated with that word. I want to get rid of this template. I don't need it because it doesn't correspond to reality. The way the word chakras is described, so I just don't use it. I take another word to describe these processes much more accurately, much more correctly, much more that corresponds to reality. That's why I just use a different word.
How many chakras are there in total? There is information that there are more than 100 of them, and we mainly refer to the family. Can we reveal everything? And what will happen then, depending on where you count them?
If we count the energy centers, only along the central line, then in the area of the physical body, well, yes, there will be 6 of them. Sate. It's still located beyond the physical realm. If we consider the energy centers not just along the central line, but throughout the entire body, and there will be about 150 inside a person within the flesh. If we count energy centers along the central line in the volume of the cocoon of a person's aura, then there will be 12 of them along the central line. And if we take the entire field, not just along the central line, there will be about 360. And if we look at a person as a flow, meaning we examine their structure beyond their cocoon, then there's infinity up and infinity down. And practitioners, already in the first year of the practical energy course, they explore up to the 108 center, and up to the 1008 center, and even up to the million center, up there. And the same goes for down. There is an endless number of them. So they can be counted in different ways. But in the end, we will still run into the fact that they are impossible to count at all.
Which centers are responsible for financial success? And by working on them, you can reach it faster. Or for example, a person has a request for health. Which centers does he need to work on?
Each energy center is responsible for a specific area of life. I've described this many times already, and I don't see the need to repeat myself right now. Within oneself, the desire to do this, especially considering that the question is quite specialized, there is no center that is specifically responsible for money. It doesn't exist in nature, but there are energy centers that can help you, depending on your activities, to earn that money, and not to get them like a breeze through the window in the form of ready-made bundles. If a person is engaged in creativity, painting pictures, or creating sculptures, then the energies of the 7th center will help them. If a person is engaged, governmental, state security structure and department, then a 3rd center will help there. If a person is an athlete, a fighter, or a businessman who constantly deals with a bunch of problems, the energies of the 1st center will assist them. And so, depending on a person's activities on how they earn money, you can determine which center he needs to develop. The same singer, not a composer, but a singer, he has to develop the 5th energy center, otherwise no one will listen to him.
The viewer writes, if our children are not energetically connected to us, then why does it hurt so much when you lose a child? It feels like half of you has been torn away. Why does the body refuse to consume food?
This is related to the main question. First of all, we are energetically connected to our parents and to our children. We are energetically linked to each other, and we are connected on the level of all humanity. We are tied together from head to toe. Where did the thesis come from that we are not connected, that we are not physically connected to a person? Yes, it's not unrelated, it's energetically connected, so there's nothing surprising about these feelings. It's all like that, and it was about.
The glued eye is apparently due to stress. She means that against the backdrop of stress, there is, well, here too, that it mainly involves a person.
In the context of stress, there's something sweet. Sweetness is an easy access to energy, meaning glucose. It's a quick way to get energy, but you'll have to pay for it with your health later on. When a person is going through a really tough time, they are essentially committing emotional suicide in that moment, even though he doesn't realize it. And by doing so, he loses a huge amount of energy. And to somehow compensate for that, he starts to eat, to consume that energy. Accordingly, he chooses the most nutritious, the most energetic. Easy to consume, easy to digest, quick carbohydrates, sugar. But he pays for this with his health, for consuming such quick energy.
What if the body refuses to consume food?
If the body refuses to consume food, then we are already dealing with the level of the psyche. So this is not a physical process. From the level of the psyche, a person can simply support his suicide and continue to fade away by refusing food. For example, when a person is sick, there is an observation that when he starts eating, it means he's on the road to recovery, he's getting better. You can see this very clearly in animals. If some weak or broken, fractured, some kitten or puppy suddenly starts eating, but everyone understands that everything is fine, he will recover. If he doesn't start eating, he will fade away. Therefore, a person seeking to commit suicide on a mental level can simply prohibit themselves. Yes, these are not very conscious processes. Let's say it's happening in the subconscious, so it's not really rational thinking, let's say, but it also has its place. Again, we have a choice, and each person makes that choice on their own.
When we lose our loved ones, is it a lesson in letting go that we have to go through, or just a part of life like birth? And there's no need to look for other meanings in this.
Absolutely right. These are just the rhythms of our world. These are the rules by which we play here. And that's it. That's how the Creator intended it when He designed the path of humanity. Yes, it's obvious that you are born here and you die here. What could be the meaning in this?
What would you advise how to cope with the loss of a loved one?
Developing extrasensory perception. As long as we perceive ourselves as something separate from reality, we will suffer immensely because of the physical aspect. If a person starts to develop the energetic aspect, first of all, it goes away. This feeling of separation from everything, he starts to see the wholeness. When a person begins to see wholeness, he begins to see how inside closer and more pleasant than an attempt to cling to something external. Yes, as long as a person doesn't see their own soul, they will try to cling to another person. It will be incredibly hard for him to part with this, especially if it's death. But if a person has found their soul, found the fire in their heart, then most likely he will never cling to anyone again. This will be nonsense to him. It's like this. So by analogy, it's like having the opportunity to, let's say, spending quality time with friends, and you're like, no, I'm going to spend quality time with wooden stumps that I'll place around me. Yeah, that will be my achievement. Yes, no, this is pure degradation. The same happens when a person finds their soul. Everything around it starts to fade, and even other people.
Continuing on the topic, there's a comment like this. That's well said about family. In life, those who have passed away felt like family, but as time goes by, you start to see them as souls that played a role in your life, sometimes even ruining something on your path. What do you think? Are the people we meet in our lives a coincidence or an inevitability?
No, it's a pattern, it's a design. And this is the design of that very part of consciousness that comes here to incarnate. And if you practice remembering yourself before you enter the physical body, then you can even recall that design. And then from that perspective, it immediately becomes clear that everything that is ours, our kinship, potential, physical body, genetics, we choose not connected to them in any way. It's like a computer game where there are different characters from different races with different professions. And when a player enters the game, he's a person, but he chooses a character for himself. There is no familial connection, but when he enters the game as that character, this race already has other representatives of the same race. They have a community and everything like that. It's the same here. When a particle of consciousness descends into the material world, it has no genetics, it has no relatives. It's connected to the entire reality. Well, you could say the whole reality is its family. But when she already determines that this body is suitable for me, from these two parents, that's when genetics comes into play. It's just a matter of choice.
If a person meets, let's say, good people, does it mean that he is moving in the right direction? and he has good karma, but if he is constantly deceived, betrayed, and meets bad people, then it's worth thinking about
that he is moving in the wrong direction and life is therefore creating obstacles for him. No, this is absolutely not a working scheme. Firstly, you yourself determine what is good and what is bad for you. And far from everything that is good for you is truly good, and far from everything that is bad for you is actually bad. It's a parable that goes on for quite a while and isn't very interesting. But the point is that a person, he fell off the roof. Oh, that's bad. But he fell into a haystack. Oh, that's good. In the end, the hay was there and the villas. Oh, that's bad. There's something about these villas. He was somehow traumatized because he wasn't taken to war. Oh, that's good. He wasn't taken to war. But this parable goes on and on and on. It's very long. But the point is that it is very difficult for a person. It's really hard to objectively determine what is actually good and what is actually bad for him. And our brain isn't much help in this matter. In this matter, our heart and the state that suits our soul are our helpers. It's about what feels right. Again, it's not the activity of the brain, it's not thoughts, it's a feeling that arises in the chest. If a fire is born in your chest, it means everything is fine with you no matter what happens to you. Even if your head says, oh, that's bad, your heart says, it's okay, it's good. If you trust your heart, if you trust your soul, after a while you just realize it and tell your brain, you were wrong once again. And the ability to feel this is really the key to success. When you walk, you come to a crossroads in life. You take 3 steps down one road and your heart sank. You come back, take 3 steps along a different road and it lights up. That's it. You don't need to think anymore. You know where it's right, where it feels right. If you can't feel it, then you can't know what feels right for you. But the brain will still deceive you. So it's not a question of good or bad, but a question, fire. In the chest it burns or it doesn't.
Can you give an example from your experience and practice?
For the last 10 years, it's been a continuous example of how I only navigate by my heart. When a person comes to me, for example, someone who has defined the last 2 years of my life, and I just saw this person and immediately realized that I agreed. There hadn't been any proposal yet, no agreements, no certainties, but I just knew that I was on board. What is he going to offer me right now? How does it work like that? Your head will say, what are you thinking? That's impossible. And the heart says, in general, here it is. Easy here. And there were other people who came and I looked at them and said, no, right away. I didn't care what they were going to offer me right now. I didn't care what stories they were going to tell me right now, fairy tales. I just knew that I wasn't going to agree to that. Because just by seeing this person, my heart already began fade away. And that's it. I don't need to think. I don't need to analyze. I live by my heart. And this has been happening for decades. And when I, for example, was driving last time to our meeting for the evening broadcast, and I just got stuck in a dead traffic jam, it was completely still. I looked at my heart and my heart was fine. It was on fire. And I calmly continued to sit in the car. I arrived 6 minutes before it started, but I made it. I didn't rush. I didn't fidget. I wasn't nervous. I calmly arrived, sat down, and we started the broadcast. Even though I could have been all worked up because the traffic jam was really dead, my heart was on fire. And I was calm.
One of your listeners shared her feelings after your practice. Anton, thank you for the practice. I felt the energy. There was warmth and vibrations in the area of the implants. And time after time, waves of goosebumps rolled through as the heart energy center was activated. With my inner vision, I saw the structures of the spine and muscle tissue. Thank you once again. Anton, you have a large audience, and quite often, beginners or those already practicing have questions about combining energy practices with the presence of implants. In your training programs, you warn in advance that there is a risk of rejection. But judging by the feedback, it seems that this can be combined without harming the body. Could you please tell the viewers more about this, when it's okay to practice and when it's not? Are there any nuances?
Just recently there was a comment under my video from a person who he wrote that he would love to engage in practices, but he won't because he has shrapnel wounds and the shrapnel is still there. Including for that person, I explained that I am completely open periodically at various meetings, conferences, webinars, where there is open access. I show practices with which you can transform a foreign object into a part of your body. Basically, in these practices, we turn an inanimate object into a powerful object. That is, an object endowed with its own creation. A powerful object, so an object endowed with its own creation. And it integrates into the physical body quite calmly, becoming a part of it, and starts to channel energy through itself. Naturally. Surgical interventions, implants, they really disrupt the conductivity of the physical body. These areas become completely impermeable to fast energy. And if we start practicing at a high level of manifestation, at a high energy level, then rejection may begin. You might experience very strong pain and inflammation can start. Everything starts happening there. The immune system may begin to resist and try to reject these implants. The same goes for transplanted internal organs. That can also have serious consequences. And so to prevent that from happening, there is a series of preparatory practices that are needed exclusively for such situations, which I periodically make freely available. At the same time, the same practices can be used by people who want to restore something within themselves very quickly and effectively. The practice is the same. That is, this is a practice as well as a practice for very fast regeneration, as well as a practice for embedding a foreign object into your own physicality.
We received a comment from your viewer. It's a balm to listen to you, Anton. I want to apologize for those idiots, narrow-minded and rude jerks who wrote those comments. They would be better off keeping quiet, but then we wouldn't have the pleasure of listening to our dear, respected Anton. Thank you, Anton. But your courses are unfortunately too expensive for me. Yes, in a spasm while I live in poverty. Moreover, I understand that everything in the system is evil. And money, of course, too. They are rude. Will you take me to practice even as a cleaner there until my heart opens up and I catch fire and I fly away wherever I need to go? Please suggest something and how you can help me. And I love you for such a beautiful and honest comment.
Well, what can I say in response? I'm already showing a lot of practices for free. These practices can be repeated and trained. These practices are from my practical energy course. These aren't just any old practices, second-rate practices. These are the very practices that are sold in the practical energy course. I've already shown a lot of these practices, and I will be showing this. We will meet, we will organize webinars, seminars. I'll just turn on the camera on my phone sometime in the evening, and we will do something too. To practice something, I have no place to hire someone. The studio where we are filming is rented, it's not mine. The people who work with me, they work for a salary. Here we are more spending than earning. Therefore, the opportunities that I give absolutely free of charge are the same opportunities that a person can buy right away, in bulk, completely. Yes, they are in parts, but to do a 16-hour broadcast and show everything, that would be too much. Yes, you can purchase all the practices at once, about 16 hours. You can attend the meetings that I lead. It's all free. I'm giving it all as a gift. And through these processes, develop yourself and practice a man who truly wants to change yourself, which is real, is ready to transform. They can already do this even with the practices that have been shown. And this is not the end. I will be showing other practices. I have heart-opening practices available for free. You can also repeat them on the same YouTube channel, so all the opportunities are there. It all comes down to the person themselves. And I assure you, opening your heart while being a cleaner is probably not the best idea in this life. It's better to find the strength in yourself, find the will in yourself, and start discovering your heart through the practices that I have shown, without worrying about my presence or absence at that moment.
Anton, can you give a vivid example from your practice when someone was able to open their heart?
Listen, well, actually, vivid examples from the practices happen almost every broadcast. Every broadcast in the closed club, when we engage in these practices, every broadcast which is completely open is called webinars. Someone always writes something, someone always shares how tears stream down their face, how they saw something inside themselves that they had been desperately trying to find outside. How someone finally felt that very thing they had been listening to all this time but hadn't actually felt. This happens at almost every meeting, every broadcast, every session. And all of these are absolutely real living people who come with their own intentions, ideas, and goals. And they just practice the skills that I show.
How does a person's life change afterwards?
The people who talk to me clearly don't complain about their lives. On the contrary, even they become the calm, they are at peace. They start to realize their ideas without any fuss, strain, or constant struggle. They become happy. They talk about how people's attitudes towards them have changed. They talk about how the people they knew have changed, and they didn't even allow themselves to think that these people could ever change. They talk about how suddenly and sharply the relationships with their parents were restored, and there was no need to specifically forgive anyone or work through anything. It just happened like that. They talked about how their children change, who don't practice, to whom they don't tell anything, who just one fine day start behaving differently. And there are countless examples like this. They are already in my mind. A huge number. They're already in my mind. Everything is mixed up for me. And to say that, yes, now I remember I had thousands of these cases before. Therefore, even one person who reached this state, it stayed with them for a while. And then continuing to train it, multiplying it, reaching it, achieving this state even more powerfully, he sees changes again, and he no longer sees life in some other way. It is so radically different that people who go in this direction and start getting the first results, that's it. They simply cannot have even the slightest any desire to go back to their old ways of interacting. Yes, everything changes, everything. And at work, relationships change. And in the family, relationships change. And on the street, relationships change. It just becomes enjoyable to live. And sometimes it happens that a person comes in and says, I want this, that, and the other. Then he practices for a while, he relaxes, and he's like, yeah, actually, I didn't want that. I never really got used to it. A lot of things happen, and it's just that I'm creating conditions for a more effortless connection with myself in the state of divinity within my heart. And that's it.
Let's move on to the next comment. A viewer writes, what's wrong with people who have depression or schizophrenia?
These people think too much. These people don't allow themselves to perceive a deeper layer of human nature. In most cases, such people limit their perception solely to the level of thinking. And when this level becomes insufficient to explain everything that's happening, the system starts to malfunction. And we end up with either a split or dissolutions. By the way, speaking of which, why not personality? Or the deepest depression because you don't see the end, you don't see the light. At the end of the tunnel, you inevitably realize that you will die anyway, and everything becomes very sad. And if you see yourself beyond physics, if you see your second energetic body, if you see your soul, if you see the divine within yourself, if you see the divine within yourself, and connect with this process, So such states basically cannot exist. They simply don't exist in that person's life.
What do you think? Do such people have more developed senses? Or the other way around? Well, schizophrenia in which?
No. On the contrary, their senses are in a permanent malfunction. And periodically something breaks through there that it is indistinguishable, whether it is reality or fantasy, imagination of illusions. A person sees a dream while awake, and a dream while awake that's not about the real world. It's exactly about immersing yourself even more dangerous illusions.
Maybe they're, on the contrary, healthy? Is there something wrong with us?
Anything is possible. But I prefer to be in my place, not in theirs.
Depression is an illness. What practices would you recommend to those who are dealing with this illness?
It is very difficult to advise people about something you've never experienced yourself. Sometimes simple things like, well, practice energy. Come to the club, get involved. Closed off for practitioners sounds like an obvious recommendation to me. But I've seen people who are in depression and for whom such recommendations are illogical. They probably won't even be able to take advantage of them. So, if a person finds themselves in such a situation, they need to stop feeling sorry for themselves. The first basic feeling of self-pity, feeling sorry for yourself, it can very well drown you in this swamp. When a person stops feeling sorry for himself, it opens up the possibility for him to act, and that action he will take next. I recommended looking for yourself beyond the material, beyond what the senses can perceive. So how will he look for himself beyond the senses? Yes, however you want, just search. And when it starts to manifest, when a person has a clear understanding that they are not just flesh and not just a brain, the thought that they are something more, that there is something else, something much more global and expansive, then they can come to me to practice the techniques I show. I'll tell them everything that's beyond that.
One of your listeners left quite a detailed comment. Then the question is, if the overwhelming majority, let's say 99%, are non-practitioners or even, on the contrary, active degenerates, then how did they even come to be here in the first place? Is it a loan from Brahma or something? Here you have a single advance on your incarnation. If you gather your will together, then you'll be able to want again. Or have those currently living already managed to come together and make a decision earlier, but now they've just given up on self-discovery? And the resulting questions from all of this: if only 1% is left, what kind of world will they create? Clearly not as sluggish as it is now. How would you comment on that?
This person perceives reality as the physical body, meaning logical connections, sequences. God has no logical connections or sequence. Everything he perceives happens for him simultaneously. This game of having this life and then the next one, for God, there is no next life. He sees all lives at once. He is aware of them. What a person perceives, like starting to do something, achieving something, and having achieved something doesn't actually exist in the real world. As soon as you make fateful decisions, your entire destiny gets rewritten and everything is already done. And you can make many such fateful decisions. And every time everything will be rewritten instantly. And all of this happens only as long as you are part of the flow, as long as you are part of the original. If you, as part of it, you stop existing and you pass through the process of dying in most cases, you no longer have any scenarios. You simply stop perceiving reality. What I'm describing right now, you can believe it or not believe it. It's all just empty nonsense, really. If a person is truly interested in these questions, if they really want to get answers, there is only one way to do it, to learn all of this, to see it. And then he will sit down and find the words for himself to describe it all. It's not about squeezing these words out of the people around you who have spent half their lives trying to understand this. I completely understand that for those who can't see it, there will always be a constant illogical mismatch. There's always something missing and something unsaid that can't be fully described. And I try to speak by the most frequent manifestation of the most statistically frequent the origin of events, but not in all of its possible variations. All variations are possible. But globally, we really need to stop thinking that for God, there is time for God. There is time for us, for people, but that's why we have the illusion of the past and the future. But how does all this happen? When appearing here and leaving. From here, I probably, until the end of time, I will choose my words carefully to describe everything in detail and still not miss anything. So, if a person truly wants to know the answer, that's my advice to him. Develop your vision, develop extrasensory perception, and see for yourself what it all looks like. And then we will just sit together and be silent.
The viewer writes, we are all at different levels of development because we are all different souls, mature, young, and beings from different worlds and spaces in these bodies. But most of them, of course, are low vibrational beings from low worlds. Anton, is it true that the level of development of our souls is different for everyone? Originally, what does it depend on?
It depends on what level we look at our soul. There are levels of our soul where it may seem like something is missing there. There are levels of the soul where there is everything and there's nothing more to develop there. The ideas of development and evolution are imposed on society, but this idea is fiction. It doesn't exist in nature. There is the dance of life and death. There is a dance of all sorts of situations, all kinds of events and possibilities. There is a dance of multivariability, multidimensionality, parallelism, and simultaneity. This dance is performed by just one being. And it dances so gracefully that it even forgets that it's dancing with itself. You can believe in it or not. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't even make sense, what I'm saying right now. It makes sense whether you are able to see it or you continue to think with those concepts, which upon examination turn out to be quite empty. And all about these low frequency souls and all these dark and light ones, it's all nonsense. It's nonsense, madness, and provocation. There is a person. In it, everything is manifested. Some people only use a part of their manifestation. Some people strive to realize everything that is available to them. And some people strive to completely stop being human and become a new being. A being that is structurally different from a human. And it's all games, it's all dances of one, the only being that is originally developed to the limit of possibility. And when you are originally developed to the limit of possibility, all you can do is forget about it.
Expressions are used quite often. Low, high vibrations. How can we understand what vibrations we truly resonate with? How do we lower them and how can we raise them?
But why raise them? To what end?
To become enlightened.
It doesn't work that way. I'll draw an analogy now and everything will become clear. Here is a piano. It has keys on one side of the musical stuff, the keyboard stuff, and on the other side, there are those who are in the middle. If you want to play something whole, beautiful, and impressive, you go through all the keys, all the available ones, black and white, low, high, with chords and in sequence. Who could even look at the keyboard and say that these keys are bad and these are good. These are what we should strive for and we need to forget about the others. And that's roughly the essence of this question. Everything is available to us, and high frequency energies and low frequency energies and mid frequency energies. And there are such frequency energies that we, being here on earth in the Kali Yuga, simply cannot reach or comprehend. They are still accessible. To reach them, you need to practice, and limiting yourself only to high frequencies is an absolutely pointless process. When a person exclusively goes in one direction, they end up turning around and find themselves on the other side. The same thing happens in the opposite direction periodically, in one way or another, indirectly. It's even described in some religious texts when the first person who entered paradise was a criminal, but somehow in some way he changed. The same person who, this story is also described in religion, who prayed all his life turned out to be not where he prayed for all his life, stumbling at the very last moment. Only harmonious, beautiful, and conscious movement through life. It gives you the opportunity to get to where you want to go. If we twist only in one direction and try to understand resonances, then most likely we won't come to anything good, because energy and thinking are a bit different processes, and we need to differentiate, at least in terms of terminology, that thinking is not the same as awareness. When you are aware, you don't think, you just know. It's a silent knowledge. When you think, you are not aware, you are just talking to yourself, and sometimes you can ramble on to such nonsense that not only doesn't correspond to reality, but it even starts to get in the way of just living. So all of this, how to understand it, just give me the high frequencies. This is the way. Does not imply anything good, neither in the moment of following it, nor in achieving the goal. And if you set yourself some goals and objectives, then I would recommend not looking at frequencies, to chase after your own soul, your own fire in your heart. And it can absolutely be understood and felt just like heat. The heat in the lower part of the chest, which starts to spread more and more throughout the body.
There's a comment like this: Anton, you need to choose a profession for yourself and seriously master its skills. The freedom of your ideas without a rudder or a steering wheel. You need a psychologist, a master, like a teacher for you, Anton. Come back to life, you're running away from it with an unclear purpose. It's good that, thank God, you're healthy. How would you respond to that?
My goal is freedom. I'm running away from with a set, and I don't see any causality to find someone who will help me stay in this dream. Such is my path, such is my intention, and everything I do feels like a pillow to me.
It also says in the comment, time is passing. No family, no children, no love for life, for nature, and no normal joy. Based on this statement, I would like to touch on the topic of family values and hear your perspective on it.
That's right. No family, no children, and the unwillingness to spend my life on that. My family was my parental home. And as long as my parent is alive, I have a family. My family was Kula, where I gained knowledge that allowed me to find myself. Children, there are a huge number of people whom I teach, to whom I pass on this knowledge. And these people, using this knowledge, raise their children one way or another. On an energetic level, all of humanity is one. So the idea of creating something of my own, to have my own, made from my genetic materials, is completely irrelevant to me.
Often, those who are searching for themselves and their spiritual path leave their families. Why? Do you think that family and children are a factor that ties you to a more earthly life and distances you from the spiritual?
Very often a person, when stepping onto the spiritual path, does so out of an endless dissatisfaction with how they live, how they move. He does it out of discomfort. He does it out of running away into spirituality. Yes, and monasticism, among other things, is not because a person is pursuing spirituality, he is leaving himself. He just wants to leave the family, and that somewhere else becomes spirituality. No, there's no family there anymore. If a person is thinking about spirituality, this is a harsh reality that for some reason many do not want to see. So I can't say such a thesis that a person took up spirituality and so he went to Axis. Yes, no. Most likely his family was already falling apart just out of inertia, like there was something shared living. There are many cases known where people, they were saved precisely in spirituality, by the way. Nothing very good came of it for them there. Because until you sort things out with yourself, until you truly find yourself, and you will at least look worthy in your own eyes, but there won't be any spirituality. There will be a constant running away from oneself, which doesn't end well. In my understanding, a spiritual person is a person who has no claims against him, a person who has avoided responsibility. This is a person who hasn't ruined or created conditions that spoiled the lives of others. So I look at my life, I look at the people I was with and who were with me, and as far as I know to this day, no one can make any claims against me that I am some kind of scoundrel. One way or another, with everyone I interacted with, everything was clean, beautiful, and it was over. I just moved on to realize my intention and my goal. And as for my parents, as for family, as long as my parents are alive, I have a family. And I do everything I can on my part to ensure that these people felt comfortable.
Is it possible to combine family and earthly values with true enlightenment, or the search for one's true self? It's a purely individual process.
The man clings to family because they don't see anything else. When a man sees the whole universe opening up before him, when a man sees integrity, unity of any living being with itself, he no longer has questions about family. What could it be? What value can family have if you realize that there is only one being and you are just a part of it? You become so to others. You perceive existence, awareness, and life from such a different angle that the motivations that allow people to create families and cultivate those desires just leave you, they don't exist. For you, every person is Mahadev. For you, every person is part of the original. And for you, every person is originally
A viewer writes, I could have been electrocuted in my childhood, but for some reason I wasn't. Instead, I was thrown to the ground. Several people left likes under this comment, which indicates that this situation also happened in their lives. And this, as it turns out, is not a rare case. Anton, could you please tell us why such scenarios might be created in life, whether it's in childhood or later when a person faces death but miraculously survives?
in order for him to wake up, in order for him to wake up, in order for some part of the illusion. It leaves his dream. Every time death approaches us, man becomes in an awakened state, in a more conscious state, in a more receptive state. So, this is nothing but one of the fundamental ways to awaken that very essence that is inherent in each of us. And death is actually very good. It does. I myself was struck by lightning in childhood. I was never electrocuted at all. That was something much more serious. And then, yes, my worldview was shaken.
Can a person attract such situations and create similar scenarios?
Yes, they can. It's just that they attract it as a conglomerate of physics, psychology, and energy. That is, when all this as a whole manifests a certain general desire to awaken, then yes, this situation can happen. In other words, it's something that comes from the subconscious, something that comes from the depths of the soul that creates such a situation. So it's not that a person, it's a reasonable and conscious act from above. No, it's a deeper process. But yes, this deep process is still within the person, not somewhere outside.
How can a person create the life scenario they want?
You just take it and create it. With your hands, feet, your thinking, and your energy, the better your hands and feet move, the easier it will be for you to do it. The quicker, sharper, and more resourceful you think, the faster you'll get it done. The more your energy is released, the greater your volume, power, and manifestation, the faster you'll get it done. We do it ourselves. We are made in the image and likeness of the Creator. If the Creator were waiting for someone to create the world for him, then probably nothing would have been created by now. It's the same with us. While we wait for things to change on their own, for only our state to change, the state of the living, the state of the dead. For everything else, we do it with our own parts. This includes the physical part, the psychological part, and the energetic part. The more developed a person is in these areas, the faster he makes the life he wants. The only thing I can notice in all this is it's important to emphasize that energy is more primary. If a person starts with energy right away, he will achieve the changes he needs much faster than if he had started with the physical aspect.
Under one of your videos, a viewer wrote, "The Matrix is predictable, but the revolver surprised me. I watched it about 5 times when it first came out, and then I noticed hidden meanings for myself." Actually, before that, I was reading Pelevin, Castaneda, Danila Andreev. I listened to lectures by Osipov. Anton, what do you think? Can the plots of movies that seem fictional and unreal be the truth that we don't know? And since they are not consciously ready to perceive her as the truth, we are given the opportunity to take a look, like a sci-fi movie as entertainment.
They give us the opportunity. Who are these generous ones that give us the opportunity? Actually, you don't have to look far here. All these movies are created by people. The more talented the author, the more beautifully they reveal the essence of the real world in their artistic work. Yes, that essence is present in Revolver. Yes, I recommended this movie for viewing, and yes, he is very strong, intertwined with the books of Castaneda and Pelevin. The same Generation P is also a cool, enjoyable film that I could recommend. There's a big difference between when a person reads something and just continues living as before, and when a person reads something and tries to implement it into his life. That's when I started practicing, when I started broadcasting. These processes into my everyday life, they finished them, just got out there. From meditation, when I started to gently weave it like a golden thread, or through all my activities, that's when I suddenly saw these golden threads running through artistic works, stories, and cinema. I saw that, my God, it turns out it was in plain sight the whole time, but I could indeed only see it when I took action myself. Taking action to implement this in your life. And while I was just reading books, because they were the right kind of books, I was just flowing from one day to the next, and everything that was happening to me, I was approaching my death for one whole day.
Movies about zombies, the apocalypse. What awaits us, maybe in our future?
Why could that be? It's already happening. It is enough to look at the unfavorable areas of some countries, and the picture there is already very similar to what they show in zombie apocalypses, especially when people are using some kind of psychoactive substances en masse. They don't differ much from the zombies that artists depict. Naturally, all of this will manifest, but it won't be everywhere, and completely. Our world is multifaceted. There is a place for everyone in our world. There will be a place for them too. But where you end up in this multifaceted world depends on each of us individually. And that person who is able to save themselves will also be able to save those around them. But sometimes there can be an illusion that if I go to save someone, then I'll be the hero, but that's not the way to go. You're probably going to ruin yourself and the person you're trying to save.
Thank you, Anton, for the answers. Make sure to share your impressions and questions. Maybe we'll answer them in the next video. Thank you.
Do you want to unlock your inner strength and learn to manage energy? The course, Power of Consciousness 1. Practical energy will provide you with tools to improve health, develop intuition, and gain a deeper understanding of the world. Join and start changing your life right now. Link in the description.